Guys, I want you to listen real carefully here, right? You see all this white? You see all that white? It's one of those whites, all right? Every time you say, I understand, a new one comes in. All right, so today's video review is going to be a little bit shorter than normal, but I needed to do this to make a point for especially some of you young guys out there. Now, the channel is Psych Hacks. It's Dr. Orion Taraban. If you don't know who he is, when you see the picture or if you saw the thumbnail, like, oh, that guy. We all know that guy. Good guy. I don't know him personally, but you know what I mean. He has a video talking about understanding, the trap of understanding, and how it's more like concessions. And he makes a point in the beginning of the video. I'm going to play the clip. It's only about a minute long. And when I come back, I need you all to just put your listening caps on for a half a second.
So this is something that often comes up in the context of intimate relationships. The foundational cultural assumption here is that when people in a relationship have problems with each other, what is called for is greater understanding. Like, this is basically the assumption upon which couples therapy is based. That if only the other person were to understand why we want what we want or why we do what we do, then the conflict and the disagreements will stop. However, this almost never works the way we think it will, and in this episode, I am going to explain why. Here's a common example of this phenomenon. A man might want more sex from his wife. However, the wife doesn't want more sex from her husband. Instead, she wants him to understand that because of some difficult sexual experiences in her past, or because of her shame-based family of origin, or because of her work-related stress, she can't, won't comply with his request. She believes that the problem is not the lack of sex, but her husband's failure to adequately understand why she doesn't want to have sex. And if he did adequately understand her situation, then the problem would go away, presumably because he would stop wanting to have sex with her. And that's generally not what happens.
Okay. Guys, I want you to listen real carefully here, right? You see all this white? You see all that white? I'm 52 years old, so the white belongs there. Beard's a little long because I run a hockey channel and it's the playoffs. You got to grow your hockey beard. But what I can tell you is the majority, each one of those whites, all right? Every time you say, I understand, a new one comes in. Every single time you say, I understand, in terms of trying to negotiate with your female partner, a new white one comes in. You hear what I'm saying? This man is speaking so much truth that it's unbearable. And he's not being very strong about it because he's got a bigger audience and he's trying to make it sound a little bit more palatable for the masses. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not criticizing him. But what I can tell you is that what he is describing is a bottomless pit. It is a bottomless pit, especially when it comes to sex. And this seems to happen. It tends to happen. You don't know about the trauma, the issues that a woman might have sexually. You're not made privy to that information. And so long after the marriage and the commitment is made, and maybe you start wanting to expand upon just the in the square box sex life that you have, and then you start finding out, well, I don't want to do this because of that. And I don't want to do this because of that. And before you know it, you are conceding for the retraction of your own sex life. Because many times once you get into a commitment, you get far down the road, the new things that you're asking for, they're just the stuff that you got before you got married. Only now the excuse is, well, I got this trauma, or I was raised this way, or my parents did this, or there's every manner of reason. And what you have to say is the man, once you're in that spot, is I understand. So how do you avoid that, right? Because once you're in the commitment, once you're in the marriage, you're kind of stuck. So as a younger guy who might meet somebody, how can you avoid, I wouldn't call it a trap, but how can you avoid this sequence of events? The only way to avoid it is two things. Be willing to live with each other for at least a year, if not 2 years, before you get married. Now, I am aware how that sounds, but let me get the points out. Okay. Be willing to only live together for a year or two before you get married. All right. Because you don't know her at that point. If you've been dating for 6 months to a year, what you know, as Chris Rock says, is you know her representative. Okay. And in many ways, that's all she knows about you, too, because we all put on a good show. But the cracks in the veneer start showing up long after the commitment has been done. Now, the other thing, I said two things. The other thing is don't make babies. Don't make babies so soon. Right. Now, this is not a guarantee that those cracks in the veneer are not going to eventually show up at some point. But what the good doctor here is talking about is, men, as you say, I understand, and you say, okay, we won't do that, or okay, I won't expect this, or okay, because I understand, okay, because I understand. There's no, it's a bottomless pit. There's no end to that, because in generally speaking, a woman is going to get away with what you allow her to get away with. And the more that you allow her to retract your sex life and to shrink the variety of that sex life, each time you say you understand, that just says to her, okay, good, because the next time there's something I'm really not, I don't have the energy to do, or I'm not really wanting to do, or whatever reason, I'll just say, well, I've got this trauma, and you're going to say, okay, all right, we don't have to do that. But like I said, most of the times the thing that you're asking for is stuff they had no problem doing it in the beginning before you got the commitment. You see what I'm saying? Now, the interesting thing there is that while many women will agree that that happens, they will also say it's not on purpose. They say we're not manipulating you on purpose. And they will tell you that the closer that they get to you, the more emotional freedom that they feel with you, the more that these things will come up and the more that they'll tell you. Maybe that's true. But that's not a reason to retract what you've already been giving. So I'm not talking about something that you're trying to change the entire dynamic of the sex life. I'm talking about something that has already been happening, and then it stops happening, and it stops happening, and then you start bringing it up, and trauma is the reason. Trauma is used as the reason as to why she can't do that. And if you, at that point, do not say, well, I understand. If you say, well, we were already doing that, you're going to be faced with a lot of anger. And that might be your biggest clue. Guys. What he's saying here, and I'm not saying never say you understand. I'm not saying never concede a point. But the specific example that he was bringing up there, I've seen it. I don't have enough. You see my eyes, how many times I've seen it with other men in terms, it is almost like a playbook. And it almost actually feels like it couldn't be on purpose. The number of times it happens, there has to be other things at play there. And maybe the women are being genuine at some point. Maybe it takes them 3 years to get to the point to tell you about an incident that happened 40 years ago. Maybe that's the truth. That's fine. But then what is your motivation for allowing her to get that close? You see what I'm saying? What is your motivation for allowing her to get that emotionally secure and that emotionally close if the end result is she is going to feel comfortable enough with you sharing traumas that she's going to use as a reason to remove things from your sex life? See what I'm saying? Be careful out there, guys. And I know it ain't easy, and especially if you find a woman right now these days that you think is relationship worthy, you're going to want to hang on to her. Take time. Take your time. And one thing that I would do, one thing that I would recommend, and women won't like this, that's okay. What I would recommend as you are building the trust and you're getting into that zone where you're really going to explore a little bit more sexually, or you're really getting to where you're really feeling like we're going to commit, I would push the envelope. Whatever it is that you want sexually, guys, I would push the envelope. I'm not saying force her. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you just use it as numbers, let's just use an imaginary number system. Your sex life right now is a 4. You'd really like it to be a 6, so you ask for 8 or 9. Okay, you ask for 8 or 9 because she's going to tell you no, and that's fine. Okay, but then that gives you the ability to negotiate back down to 6, and at least gives you a little bit of play to be able to say, well, I understood we couldn't do 9 and 8 and maybe even 7, but that's it. 6 is my line, when in reality, 6 was always your line. You have to ask for more than you really want, because they are going to eventually, the longer the relationship goes on, they're going to wear you down. And what he is talking about is the number one way that they're going to do it. They are going to consistently bring up new things that you never knew. I didn't know that happened when you was 15. I didn't know that happened when you was 20. You never told me that. You never told me that. And you are going to be penalized retroactively for acting in a manner that would be inappropriate had you known. You follow what I'm saying? Okay, they're not going to tell you. And if 4 years later, they're going to tell you. And then they're going to say, and for the last 4 years, you've been blah, 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 blah. And when you say, yeah, I didn't know, they don't care. It doesn't matter. You're not going to be responsible for understanding how you made them feel, even though they didn't tell you how they felt or the reason why they felt a certain way. So unfortunately, this is one of the most difficult topics. I said this video would be short. I'm lying. But this was one of the most difficult topics because on one hand, you don't want to be a jerk about it if she has genuine trauma, etc. On another hand, how long ago was this? Did she seek therapy for it? Was there a legitimate reason? Or is it just something she's just pulling out of her pocket to use as a penalty card to say, nope, instead of just continuing to grow the relationship, she's going to put up a full stop sign and it's got trauma on it. And then at that point, as the guy, as soon as you start saying, I understand, you're done. It's over. You may as well just close up shop, chop it off, throw the roses away. Don't chop it off. You'll use it again, guys. But again, that's the last thing I'll see. See all those? That's a lot of white ones, especially over here. I've got like this stripe here. I don't know what this is all about. This hair is all black, and then this is just like a stripe of white. Wait till a month from now when the playoffs are still going on. It's like a skunk. That's all for me saying, okay, I understand.